We are live. Hello, how's it going? Lee Hayward here with the Total Fitness Bodybuilding video chat for Friday, December the 30th, the last video chat of 2022. So, let's see if this is coming through loud and clear. Hopefully, it is. I'm just going to give it a moment there now. Let some people hop onto our live stream that we're doing. So we are streaming right now through Facebook as well as the Total Fitness Bodybuilding YouTube channel. So hopefully this is coming through loud and clear and you can hear me and see me and all that good stuff. Good stuff. So as this is coming through and as you join in, please let me know and type into our video chat if you can hear me and see me and all that. And the way these video chats work is I'm going to be hanging out here for the next hour and answering questions and topics of discussion that you may have related to fitness and nutrition, any specific challenges that you have with regards to your workouts, with your muscle building and fat loss goals. Feel free to type those questions and topics of discussion into our chat window, and I'll do the best that I can to help you out over the course of our chat today. So we're getting into the area now where this literally New Year's is right around the corner. So this is the time of year when the fitness industry sees its biggest boom generally, right? I mean, I can't see why this year would be any different, but statistically and historically, this has always been the biggest time of year because people kind of let themselves go over the holidays and then everyone's feeling fat and guilty and bloated and wanting to get in shape again now as soon as New Year's rolls around, the whole New Year's resolution stuff, blah, blah, blah. And the biggest mistake, hands down, the biggest mistake is people try to do too much too soon, are overzealous and burn themselves out in the process and end up achieving nothing. It's this all or nothing mentality. And the problem with this all or nothing approach is you very rarely get it all. And more often than not, like over 90% of the time, you end up with nothing. And that's the truth when it comes to New Year's resolution goals. Like, I'm not a fan of New Year's resolution goals because a lot of times people put it up too high of on a pedestal. Like, they make it too big of a deal. Like, you should be setting goals and ambitions and targets all the time. It shouldn't be something you do once a year. It should be something you're doing all the time. And set smaller, more realistic, more attainable, sustainable goals. And that's the way I like to go about it, instead of having these big grand goals that sound impressive when you talk about it, but in reality very rarely ever get achieved. And that's the truth about most New Year's resolution goals. And that's what we're heading into, that time of year again, where most people are going to shoot for the stars and not even get off the ground. Like that. I know they say shoot for the stars and hit the moon. Most people are not even getting off the ground. And that's the reality of it. So we can certainly talk about that. If anybody has any specific questions or wants to strategize about, New Year's fitness programs and things like that, feel free to type that into our chat window. And just curious, like, how did you do over the holidays, right? This is a challenging time of year for a lot of people. I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't eat perfectly over the holidays. I enjoyed some holiday dinners and some desserts and all that kind of stuff with the family. But it was better than it has been in years past. And that's the most important thing. And I'm not beating myself up over it because it was a planned, a planned setback in a way. And I don't even know if the setback is the proper word, because it's a dial back. Like, we can look at our fitness and nutrition almost like a thermostat, right? You can crank it up when you're really pushing to achieve something. Like, maybe you got a specific goal in mind, or there's a sporting event you want to get in shape for, or some specific thing that you really want to, push yourself to maximize your progress in the short term. And then you can kind of dial it back to more of a maintenance program. And that's what I did over the holidays. I dialed it back. So I was a little looser with the nutrition and dialed it back a bit. But with that being said, I still kept my activity level fairly high over the holidays. One of the things that I've been doing personally is on Strava, they have the Festive 500 Challenge, which is cycle 500 kilometers over the course of between December 24th, Christmas Eve, and New Year's Eve. The goal to cycle at least 500 kilometers during that time. And I've been participating in that challenge, and I'm very close to closing in on that goal. I will be well ahead of my target by New Year's Eve. All right. So I'm actually, when I finish this chat, I'm going to go for a ride and rack up some more miles. But by tomorrow, I'll have knocked off that 500-kilometer challenge from Christmas Eve to New Year's Eve. So that's helped to keep my fitness and weight in check during the holidays, even though my eating was a little more lax than normal. It's kind of like checks and balances there. So I purposely dialed it back. But again, the big thing I look at, it's better than it was in past years. And that's something I was actually chatting to some of my coaching students today, had some coaching calls. And the thing is, we don't need to have that all or nothing extreme perfection approach. It's just, can we be better than we were before? And if you're better than you were before, that's progress. All right, so we got some people joining in right now. I see Greg is joining in, saying he can hear me loud and clear. That's good. I've seen these come through earlier. That's why I knew I was good to keep going here with the chats. Neil from the Philippines joining in. Got John joining in. Good stuff. All right, some questions coming through, and I will be getting to those questions very shortly. But first, I have one that I want to address that was sent in from one of my personal coaching students, John. And let me just open this up. He actually sent me this through Facebook in advance. So I'm just going to pop this open and answer John's question for us here. So he says, this is John from over in the UK. And the reason he sent this in advance is because over in the UK, it's getting quite late. And John is probably in bed by now or getting ready for bed. So he sent the question in advance so he could catch up on the replay. But this was his question. He says, could you please address the topic of beta-alanine as a supplement? The claims are it increases your exercise capacity and decreases muscle fatigue. It's also supposed to have muscle quality and functional benefits for older adults such as myself. And John is in his early 70s. He says, as a vegetarian, I'm probably not getting enough, so I bought some in powder form. I took the recommended dose earlier this week and experienced unpleasant side effects of that tingling in the skin, which has lasted about an hour. Today, I reduced the dose to 1/3 of a teaspoon and still got some minor tingling, although stated to be harmless, it's not pleasant to experience. If I reduce the dosage anymore, I wonder, is there any point to taking it? And he's just wondering, like, my thoughts and insights on beta-alanine. Well, that's a great question, and I totally understand where you're coming from with that, John, because I have supplemented with beta-alanine myself, and I'm pretty sure everybody who has used beta-alanine, whether they take the pure form or they get it in the form of a pre-workout, because a lot of pre-workout supplements these days have beta-alanine as one of the ingredients. It's kind of like a concoction of things mixed in there, and beta-alanine is one of them. And when you take it, you tend to get that almost like that pins and needles tingly sensation. And it is like, it's not harmful. It's not going to cause any side effects or damage or anything like that, but you do get that tingly feeling, and it isn't enjoyable, right? I gotta be honest. It's not the most pleasant sensation when you do experience that. Now, if you continue to use it, you kind of get, I guess, a bit numb to it or used to it, immune to it, whatever you want to say. It's you get used to it. That's the bottom line if you continue to use it. Because for a while, I was using it on a regular basis, and I did just kind of accept the fact that, okay, for the first little while when I take this, I'm going to feel a bit tingly. I have that pins and needly sensation throughout the skin, and it just subsides and wears off. But if you want to continue using it and to try to avoid that, one of the ways you can go about it is breaking it up into smaller servings throughout the day. So instead of taking, the big full dose in a single go, like as a pre-workout, taking that full spoonful or that full scoop or whatever, you could break it up throughout the day and have multiple smaller servings. And this should help to minimize that tingling sensation, but still allowing you to reap the benefits that beta-alanine has. And just to kind of give you an overview of it, I mean, this is something like if you want the full details, like you can go on Google and start searching for research studies on beta-alanine, what it is. There's all kinds of blog posts and articles and studies done on it to, share what it is and how it works and all that kind of stuff. But in layman's terms, it helps to increase your work capacity and helps to delay muscle fatigue. So it's not really a supplement that's going to have a big impact on maximum strength. Like it's not really something that you'll take to increase like your 1 rep max bench press or anything like that, but it's something that's going to help to increase your work capacity, help to increase high intensity efforts that last a few minutes or more. So those type of efforts. So think of like an athlete who's doing high intensity cardio. That's where this could help. So, for example, a boxer, like a round of boxing is 3 minutes. Beta alanine could help to prolong your work capacity and delay fatigue during that 3-minute effort. You think of someone like an athlete who's playing sports, maybe they're some high intensity sports. It helps in those type of situations. A runner or a cyclist, if you're doing a high intensity efforts in that, say, 3 to 5 minute range, that's where beta alanine really has its power. Is it helps to delay that fatigue and it helps to increase your work capacity. It's not huge. I mean, it's not going to make or break, but it does give you a slight edge. It can increase your work capacity by a few percent. So it's not like make or break. It's not something that it's a must have or anything like that, but it's a nice to have. I mean, if you can afford it and you can tolerate it and everything else, then hey, and you want to try it, by all means, you can certainly do so. But it's not one of these things that's a must have, going to make or break your progress in the gym. Like I've went for years without using it. I'm not currently using it now, and I haven't used it for months, but I have gone through phases where I do use it. And sometimes now, the only time I will use it is if I'm really pushing myself. For example, like if I'm going to be doing a really hard, high intensity workout, or maybe some high intensity cycling. Like, for example, if I'm going to do an FTP test and I'm going to empty the tank and just try for a new personal best, I'll probably take a pre-workout that contains some beta alanine to help give me that little extra oomph, right? That to help to delay the fatigue and just ensure that I'm getting maximum performance for the effort that I'm putting in. But for my regular workouts, regular cardio sessions and stuff like that, I usually don't bother using it. I try to keep it to a minimum. And it's one of those things I save it for when I need it. That's the way I personally go about it. But, everyone's, it's personal preference. So the way I would recommend it to avoid that uncomfortable tingling sensation, try breaking it up into smaller amounts. And you could even ramp it up. So like if you want, you could take like a quarter of a serving just once a day for a few days, and then take a quarter of a serving twice a day for a few days, and then a quarter of a serving 3 times a day for a few days, and then eventually you'd have that quarter of a serving 4 times a day to equal the full serving, so to speak, and build it up from there. So like you're kind of increasing your body's tolerance to it gradually, instead of going from no beta alanine to full dose right off the bat. You build it up and let your body adapt to it, and that should help to minimize some of that uncomfortable feeling that you get from taking it. And that's fine. I mean, it'll just take a little longer for it to build up into your system, but you'll still ultimately get the same results over the long term. So just some strategies you can try and incorporate. And ultimately, even if that doesn't sit with you, you can just stop it. Like it's not a must-have supplement. You can certainly make good progress and enjoy quality workouts without using beta alanine. Right? It's a relatively new supplement in terms of sports performance. Athletes for decades and have gotten great results without using beta alanine. So it is not a must-have by any stretch of the imagination. It's just a nice to have. All right, let's move on. See who we have joining in today. Again, Greg is joining us. Bumble's Apple is joining in. Neil mentions there is Neil's from the Philippines. Eagle Eye John joining in. Says, I'm 49 today. Happy birthday. I know, we were chatting on Facebook earlier. He says, is it more you weigh, more muscle you can put on with right foods? Is it more you weigh, more muscle you can put on with right foods? No. Well, if somebody weighs more, they should have more muscle because they're just a bigger person in general. But it's not the same process applies regardless if you're a smaller stature frame or you're a bigger stature frame. the same process applies as far as nutrition and stuff like that. Like it's not like there's, okay, we have the nutrition plan for the skinny guy and the nutrition plan for the big guy or whatever. Like the same core principles apply in all situations. So I'm not 100% sure what you're asking here, but the bottom line is it's the nutrition is the same regardless if you're starting off with a small frame or a bigger frame. If you're trying to build more muscle, the same principles apply. However, someone who's genetically a bigger person and has that body type will probably make better gains than someone who's genetically a smaller person. And there's really not much you can do about that. Like that's just kind of like their God-given genetics. And that's the whole basis of the different body types, the somatotypes. You know, you have the ectomorph, the mesomorph, and the endomorph. Now, I know that's kind of a generalization, but it is a good generalization to give you an overview of how it works. Someone who has more of a mesomorphic or an endomorphic build is going to have more potential to put muscle on their frame versus someone who's naturally a skinny ectomorph. So you just got to factor that in. But the good news is if someone is naturally a skinnier person, like an ectomorph, they tend to make leaner gains and they tend not to struggle with putting on excess body fat, the same as someone who has those endomorphic tendencies, which is the thicker, stockier build. So there's advantages to both, right? It's not like one is good, bad, right, or wrong. It really depends on the situation. I mean, obviously, certain sports and activities favor a smaller, leaner, athletic person. Certain sports and activities favor a bigger, heavier, stockier person. So it's just kind of like gearing what you're trying to do based on your body type. And that's something, this is kind of a side topic here, but one of the things I've noticed, and I was reading this in a lot of in a lot of the European countries, when they're training athletes and they're seeking out athletes, they kind of take kids, you know, when they're going through school and they're in their teenage years and stuff, and just train them for general physical conditioning to get them in shape, right? Just get these kids in shape with general physical training. And then the coaches will come in and decide who they want for the different sports based on their body types. Now, I'm not exactly sure what country this was, but it's something I was reading a while back. This is years ago I was reading this, but it's a different mentality of choosing sports. Whereas like in North America, kids kind of say, oh, I want to play basketball. I want to play football. I want to do this. I want to do that. And they just jump into the sports. Whereas I can't remember exactly now. I'd have to look this up, but it was over in Europe, some European countries. The kids just get in shape and then the coaches choose the kids based on their body types. So like, hey, you have the body type for this sport, and then someone else has a body type for that sport. And then that helps to amplify the progress that much better, because let's just say like I wanted to be a basketball player, right? And like, oh, I'm dead set on being a basketball player, but I'm 5'6". Well, genetically, I'm not going to be a great basketball player at 5'6", regardless of how passionate I am, how full of piss and vinegar I am. I just genetically don't have the build to be a basketball player. Whereas someone else who's probably 6'6" or taller, they do have the genetic, ability to be a good basketball player. So it's nice sometimes to have that outside eye there to say, hey, you have the body type for this. So go, take advantage of it, versus people trying to decide for themselves, which may not always be the best decision. But in that situation, John, the same process applies regardless of your body type. All right, moving on. Try to stick to this. Robert's joining in. Says, I had a few things that I shouldn't, nothing that I can't get back on track. So he's referring to the holidays. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with enjoying the holidays, because that's an important part of your life. Spending time with friends and family and enjoying some home-cooked meals. If that's important, then you shouldn't feel guilty or beat yourself up over it. It should be something that you enjoy it and you balance it out. Right? Because a lot of times people have this all or nothing mentality, as I mentioned before, and you got to find out like what's truly important. Like, what are you doing this for in the bigger scheme of things? And a lot of times it is to enjoy, quality time with friends and family and all that. So you have to make that work. I mean, it is for me, for sure. So I don't feel guilty over the fact that I enjoyed, a home cooked meal that my wife made for Christmas Day, and we had our family in to enjoy it. Like, I don't feel guilty at all that I enjoyed that meal with them. I mean, I'd be pretty much a jerk if I said, no, I'm not going to eat Christmas dinner. I'm going to have my chicken and broccoli out of a Tupperware container, right? So I could stick to my so-called diet. I think that would be, I'd be missing out, right? All right, let's move on. We got Neil joining in. Saying, Lee, I'm planning on having a full week of deload next week as a reward of consistent full body workouts 3 times a week and let my body recover at full. Are deloads necessary and what are your tips? It depends. It depends is it necessary? How do you feel? How are you progressing? That's what you need to ask yourself. Like, and it depends on the individual and how you approach your training. Like, first off, in my opinion, working out 3 times a week is not extreme or excessive or requiring a deload. Now, that's my opinion. Everybody has their own personal opinion and their own personal fitness levels. Like, if someone's starting off from scratch and not doing any exercise, then 3 workouts a week is probably very intense and very demanding. But for someone who's used to physical exercise and has been working out for years, 3 workouts a week is pretty, that's on the conservative side. So for 3 workouts a week, I don't think you'd need a deload if you're in really good shape to begin with. But again, that's your personal perspective. But as far as when it's necessary, you got to really listen to your body. And when you know that you've been super consistent, you've been pushing it, and you're feeling that you're burnt out, like you're feeling like I'm not recovered, I'm not even making the same strength gains as I was before, or you find that you're actually not getting stronger, you're getting weaker. This is a common sign of overtraining. So if you're pushing that overtraining and you're feeling the symptoms, then that's when a deload can help. And what a deload is, it's not stopping training. It's simply doing easier workouts. So you could either cut back the volume, cut back the intensity, cut back on the weight, but you're still working out, but you're just not emptying the tank when you work out. You're kind of going through the motions and you're still keeping yourself active, but working out without totally draining yourself. So with the weight training, you're not going to rep out to failure. You're going to stop a few reps shy of failure. You're probably going to choose easier exercises, maybe take longer rest breaks between sets. When it comes to your cardio, you're going to do it at a lower intensity, at a lower heart rate. You're not going to push yourself to the same extreme. You're still going to exercise, but you're just not going to fatigue yourself. It's going to be active recovery. That's what deloading means. So if you feel you need it, by all means, do it. A lot of high-end training programs these days kind of have that built into it. They use like a polarized training model where a lot of your workouts are done at lower intensity, and then you have some of your workouts that are done at high intensity. And we see this especially in the endurance sports. We don't see it a lot so much in the weight training sports, even though you will see it to a certain degree where people will do easier workouts and then like max effort workouts. But in the endurance world, this is becoming very popular and very effective, where the majority of your workouts are done at lower intensity to kind of like build the base level of conditioning. And then a smaller percentage are done at high intensity to really build that peak level of fitness. But you can still take that same approach with your weight training workouts as well. So it really depends on how you're progressing, how you're feeling, whether or not you need to do a deload. So, but the big thing is deload doesn't mean time off. Like, it's not stopping working out. It's just simply going through a phase of easier workouts. All right, we got Orville joining in. Welcome, Orville. Orville's a member of the Muscle After 40 Blueprint. Nice to have you tuning in. TI or TL, I'm not sure. I think it's TI Breezy. Says, I've been in the gym for 2 years, then dropped due to work, and it's been really hard to go back sometimes. So what will be the best fitness plan for me? All right, you've been in the gym for 2 years, then dropped. Well, if you're coming back to the gym after a layoff, you need to start back just like a beginner again. You really do. Like, even though you've worked out in the past and you did so for a couple of years, if you haven't been into the gym for a significant amount of time, whether that's several weeks, several months, or several years, you need to start back like a beginner again. and just kind of lay the foundation. So I would probably recommend, 3 total body workouts a week, something like that. Just kind of go through the motions and get back into the routine of exercise. The biggest thing that you need to focus on is building the habit of exercise. What you actually do when you're in the gym is really secondary in importance. Like, the most important thing is that you show up. Build the habit of showing up. Be the type of person who is dependable and who can show up. 80% of your success is just showing up. What you do when you get there, as a beginner, I really couldn't care less. Like, I know that sounds a bit distant or detached or whatever, but it's the truth. Like, it really doesn't matter, because what matters is building the habit of showing up. Because I mean, I could give you the perfect program with the perfect set and reps and making sure that we're hitting all your major muscle groups and balance and proportion and blah, blah, blah. And we could have this perfect plan. But if you're not consistent and you're not the type of person who can show up on a regular basis and you're not dependable, that doesn't mean jack shit, right? The perfect program is useless if you don't actually follow it. So the most important thing is to build the habit of showing up. And a great example of this, if you've ever read the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, if you haven't, I'd highly recommend it. I almost consider it a must-read book, right? I don't really say that about many things, but this is one of those books I always recommend it to all my personal coaching students, because it uses a lot of diet and exercise examples in there, because this is something that applies to pretty much everybody. Even though it's not a diet and exercise book, it's a habit book. A lot of the examples, he relates them back to diet and exercise. So it's very helpful for anybody who's trying to get in shape. And in fact, if you're looking to get in shape for New Year's, get that book, Atomic Habits by James Clear. Right? I'm not affiliated with it in any way, shape, or form. I'm just recommending it as an honest recommendation, because it's a darn good book. But one of the examples he used in there was of a gentleman that he knew who lost over 100 pounds, and how he started his fitness journey is he just showed up to the gym for 5 minutes and left again. So I think it was like for the first month or the first 6 weeks or whatever it was, the only thing he had to do was show up to the gym, walk through the gym door, and after 5 minutes, he turned around and left. That was it. And the idea was just to build the habit into his routine, become the type of person who shows up to the gym. And after a month of doing it, he said, well, I'm showing up here on a regular basis. I'm walking into the gym, right? I'm here. I might as well start doing something. And then he started to actually do some exercises while he was at the gym. But for the first month, the only thing he did was show up to the gym. Like, that was on his calendar, in his planner or whatever, go to the gym. And he walked in the gym doors, stayed for 5 minutes, turned around and left. But he built the habit. Like, he got that into his routine. That's the hardest part. Like, everyone is wondering, like, what's the set and rep pattern? What's this? What's that? What's the best exercises? Again, none of that stuff matters if you can't be consistent with actually showing up. So be the type of person that shows up. That's the most important thing. And you even mentioned it there in your message, right? You were going to the gym and you dropped off, right? I mean, like, the truth is there's always going to be excuses for not going to the gym, right? Everyone's going to have their work. Everyone's going to have their family. Everyone's going to have challenges. Everyone's going to have the shit hitting the fan from time to time. And don't get me wrong, sometimes those challenges may temporarily stop you from going to the gym. Like, maybe something really bad happens and you do have to take a little bit of time off the gym. Like, maybe there's a death in the family, right? And you do have to take some time off to the gym for that. Or maybe, there's a major storm and your home gets flooded, or, whatever. There's a natural disaster. And, for the short term, maybe you can't go to the gym because something really bad happens. Or maybe you get really sick or something like that. But for the most part, these things are recoverable and you're going to be able to get back on track sooner than later. So the biggest mistake a lot of people make is they get off track. They get busy, they lose the momentum, and they fall off track. And then they start building the habit of not showing up. And then they start to become the type of person who doesn't show up to the gym. And even when you don't have anything on your plate, and like, you have time to sit down and watch television, or you have time to hang out with your buddies, or you have time to scroll through social media or watch YouTube videos, but you don't have time to go to the gym, right? You have to become the type of person who makes time to go to the gym. That's the most important thing, right? That's the most important habit that you can build. Once that's in place, the rest is easy, right? The rest is just tactics after that. But the hardest part is building the habit. All right, moving on. What else we got there? We have Martin's joining in, saying he loves the tingles from the beta alanine. Yeah, I can relate to that. I actually, once I got used to it, I did actually crave the beta alanine tingles that we were talking about earlier. And if I didn't get it, I almost felt like, geez, did I take enough? Is this stuff legit or is it expired? I don't know. But yeah, it was kind of like that tingly sensation kind of let me know that I was getting ready to work out. So, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just an uncomfortable sensation at the beginning. Got Lee Dunnigan joining in. Welcome, Lee. Uncle Fester joining in. Hello, Lee. Any tips for an ectomorph that's struggling to put on muscle? Is an hour and 30 minutes in the gym too much? 3 days a week. Have a happy new year, sir. All right. Is an hour and 30 minutes in the gym too much? It depends. Right? It depends on your current level of fitness. I don't think that's too much. Most of my workouts typically last about an hour and 30 minutes. Now, when I say an hour and 30 minutes, that's including my warm up, that's including the weight training, and that's including stretching at the end. So the actual weight training portion is probably about 60 minutes. The warm up is 10 to 15 minutes. The post workout stretching is 10 to 15 minutes as well, thereabouts. So a typical workout, like when I go to the gym to work out, I'm usually there for an hour and a half of exercise. That's very normal for me. So I don't consider that too much. But again, that's for me and my fitness capacity. For someone who's brand new, I mean, an hour and 30 minutes is probably way too much, right? If someone who's never worked out in years, maybe 30 minutes is more than enough. So you can't really put a number there, right? It's an individual thing. As far as ectomorphs as struggling to put on muscle, the biggest thing that you really want to focus on here is quality nutrition and letting yourself grow, not trying to force yourself to grow. A big mistake that a lot of people make when they're trying to gain muscle is they overeat with the thoughts that, hey, all this excess food is going to eventually be converted to muscle. And that's not the case. Only a small portion of those excess calories are going to be converted to muscle, and the rest is going to be stored as body fat. In fact, myself and Jeff Samatero did a video about this a while back. Let me just see. I can't remember the exact name of it off the top of my head, but it's one of the more recent videos that we did. I'm just going to open this up on my, where was it? Which one was it? We did it about a month ago. It's called Bulking and Cutting versus Main Gaining. I'd recommend you watch that video. It's one of the most recent videos on my YouTube channel. If you go to the Total Fitness Bodybuilding YouTube channel, and it's called Bulking and Cutting versus Main Gaining. And it's what's the best approach for body recomposition and lean mass gains. But I would highly recommend you check that video out if you haven't already done so, because that would really put some good perspective on nutrition strategies here. But the big one is when it comes to your nutrition, you want to focus on eating enough to fuel your workouts and feel like you're not deprived or depleted, and let yourself grow, right? It's like eating enough so that you can train hard, recover, and build muscle through that process of working out and stimulating muscle growth in the gym, and not simply trying to gain weight from overeating, because the weight you gain from overeating is not lean gains. It just gets stored into excess body fat. And in the short term, you may think you're making gains because, okay, the weight on the scale is going up and you feel bigger and fuller, but it's just excess body fat. And even though you may look bigger in your clothes, it's not quality, because then eventually you're going to get to the point where you want to trim off that excess body fat and look lean so that you can actually take your shirt off and not look like you got a roll of pudge hanging over your belly. And in the process of doing that, you're going to end up losing a lot of weight, right? And probably potentially losing muscle that you gained in the process as well. So it's much better to make leaner gains and slower gains versus just simply trying to force feed yourself to gain weight. So the biggest thing is eating enough to fuel your workouts, recover, and then focus on the weight training, like building muscle in the gym through progressive overload, getting stronger. And you'll find that a stronger muscle is a bigger muscle. So if you can make good quality strength gains in the gym and fuel your workouts, that's going to lead to a more muscular physique. And if you are naturally a slim build person, don't expect to be huge. Like if you're naturally, well, you're saying you're an ectomorph. And again, I don't know your age, your height, your weight, or whatever, but like, let's just say you're 150 pounds. Don't expect to be a ripped 250-pound bodybuilder. Like that's probably not in realistic potential for you. Like it's not realistic potential for a hell of a lot of people. It's not realistic potential for me. Not realistic for a lot of people. Like that's world-class Olympia professional level, right? Like the average person, be more realistic with your goals and your outcomes, and even look at some people on social media and see, people that you admire. And a lot of times they have lean muscular physiques, but they're really not that big, right? I'll give you a prime example of an ectomorph who's lean and muscular and very popular in the fitness space, Jeff Cavalier from Athlean X. I mean, he looks amazing and you see him, but like he has that ectomorph body type, but he's maximized his body type. He's maximized his potential, and he has that lean, athletic, muscular build, but he's not a big guy. Like I don't know his exact weight, but I mean, like he's pushing 6 feet tall, and he's probably around 170 to 180 pounds, somewhere in that range. So he's not a big man by bodybuilding standards, but he looks good from an athletic physique standard. So use like those kind of benchmarks as like targets to shoot for, instead of thinking like looking at a pro bodybuilder who's 250 pounds or bigger and thinking, oh, I got to be that big. No, that's just setting yourself up for disappointment and unrealistic expectations. You don't need to be 250 pounds in order to have a lean, athletic looking body type. You can be much smaller. You can be sub 200 pounds and still have a physique that is very enviable and very desirable by most people's standards. All right, moving on. Let's see what else we got there. Steven is joining in. It says, Lee, I'm getting where I want in size, great arms, back, legs, everything but my waist. I'm getting abs, but my waist is super thick. I do cardio, exercise, bike, and abs 3 times a week, but can't get it small. If I eat less, I lose too much size. I can't win. LOL. Many thanks. All right. Just based on that, and I'm going to say, I'm assuming that's probably a current avatar picture in your post there, Steve. Like you've got a lot of muscle on your frame. There's a lot of thick muscle on your frame, and you are fairly lean. Like you can see the outline of your abdominals there. So I mean, there's not a lot of excess body fat. There's not a roll of pudge, right? So if you have a thick waist, that's just genetics. It's not excess body fat. Like if it's not just saggy, rolly fat, then that's just your body structure. Like some people are naturally thicker than others. Some people are naturally slimmer. Some people have that little tiny waist. Some people have a thicker, blockier waist. Some people have wider shoulders. Some people have narrower shoulders. It's just your body structure. And there's really not much you can do about that. I mean, you can still do all the stuff that you're doing. Like you mentioned there, just go back to your question. You're saying, you're doing cardio, you're eating clean and all that kind of stuff. You're saying you're doing abs 3 times a week. You could probably even cut back on the ab work. Like you don't need to do abs 3 times a week, because the abs are a muscle like any other muscle. And if you continue to train them, then they're going to get bigger and thicker. And if your waist is already big and thick, you may want to actually like scale back. Like once a week for abdominal training is more than enough. You don't need to build more muscle there. You've already got enough muscle. You just want to kind of keep the fat to a minimum. And so that's one thing I would probably suggest, like just scale back on the ab training, because you really don't need to do excessive amounts of ab work. And I've noticed that myself. Like I've got a thicker waist by bodybuilding standards. Like I'm not the natural, like little wasp thin waist V-taper physique. Like I just don't have that genetically. I'm more of a blocky square type of physique. And I mean, I would love it if my waist was smaller, but that's one thing that I used to do a lot of back in, especially in my early days of training. I used to do a lot of abdominal work very often I'd train abs with every single workout, and I would do a lot of ab work, a lot of volume and stuff. And I think that may have actually contributed to making my waist even thicker to a degree, because I've noticed, like, even when I diet down and lose body fat and like get down to single digit body fat percentage, my waist is still fairly thick from a bodybuilding perspective, right? Like by average person perspective, no, it's not thick. But I mean, when you look at by bodybuilding perspective, yeah, I have a thick waist. So that's one thing that you could possibly do. But ultimately, it's genetics. Like you can lose the body fat, you can build muscle, but like you can't change your genetic structure, right? So I mean, if you just gotten thick muscle mass, and if you're doing a lot of heavy lifting, you're doing those squats and deadlifts and overhead presses and all that, that's going to build a thick, strong core, right? And the core is everything. It's it's the abs, it's the obliques, it's the lower back, is that all that band of muscle right around the midsection. And anybody who does a lot of heavy lifting is going to have a thick core. Like you look at bodybuilders or strongman competitors, like guys who do a lot of heavy lifting, they usually got big waistlines to show for it as well, right? And so it's just the way you're built, right? There's not really much you can do to change that. We have numbers 1, 2, 3, 00, 11, 22, 33. Let's go, Lee, you're the man. Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate the support. What else we got? Don joining in. It says, I'm 45 years old, waiting on testosterone blood work to come back. Been sober for 1.5 years. I want to have energy and feel alive again, plus gain more muscle. Any tips? Awesome. Okay, you're first off, congratulations on being sober for 1.5 years. That's a huge accomplishment, right? And that's going to make a big difference, right? And just tell you from personal experience, I haven't drank alcohol since 2011. Now, I didn't have a problem with alcohol before then, but it was one of those things that I didn't really enjoy. It wasn't adding anything to my life. I just did it because social situations very often revolve around alcohol, right? You go out to a nightclub, or you go to a party, or you go to a social event, and everybody's drinking. It's always around alcohol. So I used to just drink to fit in, but I haven't drank since 2011, and I don't miss it. And I've adjusted my circle of friends, and I've adjusted how I deal with social situations. So first off, a lot of the friendships that I had, which were related to alcohol, I don't have those friendships anymore, because I'm sure if we all, anybody who drinks, and if you look into your own life and circle of friends, there's probably friends that the only time you see these people is when there's alcohol involved. They're your AKA, your quote unquote drinking buddies. But if there's no like, you've probably never seen them when you're sober, right? Those type of friends, I've eliminated them from my life. So like there's people who I used to drink with back in the day that I haven't seen in years, right? Because the only time we ever got together was if there was a party or nightclubs or whatever, that type of environment. So when I got rid of that out of my life, then I've got rid of those people out of my life as well. And I'm quite happy that I did, because it wasn't a positive friendship. It wasn't a positive influence. And I've replaced those with better quality friendships. So again, congratulations on that. I think that one right there is this probably the single biggest thing that's going to, improve the quality of your life and make you feel alive and all that. So again, congratulations on that. As far as the testosterone, I'm glad you went and got the blood work done to see where you are with that, because that's going to be a big one as well. Making sure that you have adequate testosterone levels is a big one, because testosterone is the hormone that makes you feel like a man. And if it's not at optimal levels, it's something you want to correct, whether it's diet and lifestyle choices, or if it actually, you need to look into, more advanced hormone replacement therapy options. And I actually made a video talking about hormone replacement therapy and, real world situations. And I shared some examples from one of my personal coaching students who actually utilized hormone replacement therapy and made some amazing progress because of it. So if you want to check that out, just do a search for Lee Hayward HRT/TRT. It's Lee Hayward, hormone replacement therapy, testosterone replacement therapy. And you should find that video. Again, it's up on my Total Fitness Bodybuilding YouTube channel if you want to go check that one out. But that really goes into more detail about what it is, how it works, and the process. I mean, those right there, though, I mean, those are some big steps that you've taken. As far as the whole exercise approach, one thing that I would recommend, Don, if you haven't already done so, get a copy of my Ripped After 40 ebook. And I have a link to it in the description below this video. So like when this video is over, just pop open the video description and there's a link in there for Ripped After 40. It's a PDF download and it explains the process that I've went through and I've shared with, I've utilized it myself and shared with my personal coaching students to make a healthy, sustainable lifestyle approach of not only getting in shape, but how to stay in shape. And I definitely recommend you check that out. It's I think it's like 69-page PDF download that you can get. So again, I have the link to it in this video description below. Check that out. I think that will definitely help you to give you the mindset and the strategies on how to not only get in shape, but more importantly, stay in shape. Because when it comes to fitness and nutrition, like anybody who's determined and got willpower can suffer it out in the short term and make progress. And most of the dramatic before and after transformations that you see are usually from this extreme all or nothing approach where people like put on the blinders and say, that's it, you know, for the next 3 months or whatever, I'm boiled chicken, broccoli, I'm 6 days a week in the gym, I'm going to do 2 hours of cardio a day. Like, I don't give a shit. I'm just going to go full on head first, you know, dive into the deep end, put the blinders on, no cheat meals, no nothing. Going to just like laser focused. And that approach works. It absolutely works. And I mean, that's what I used to do when I was competing in bodybuilding, right? Like I always set my target, say like there's a competition coming up in 4 months. So for the next 4 months, that's it, right? Putting the blinders on, laser focus. And I would avoid cheat meals. I'd avoid restaurants. I'd avoid family dinners. I would avoid alcohol consumption. I'd avoid everything like that. And it was just like eat, sleep, train, repeat. And even though it sounds cool and it sounds hardcore and people are like, wow, you know, you got so much discipline, so much willpower, you're so motivated. And people would look at that with admiration. And like the process sucks. It really does, because it's not enjoyable at that level. It's suffering it out. And it's just like, how long can you suffer this out before you finally throw in the towel and quit? And the way it was for me when I was getting ready for bodybuilding shows, like I could suffer it out, you know, have extreme levels of willpower for the short term, as long as I could see the finish line. Whereas like, okay, the contest is in 4 months. Well, I can suffer it out for 4 months. But as soon as that contest was over, then it was like, okay, where's the all-you-can-eat buffet? Where's the pizza place? Where's the ice cream shop? Like, where's the bakery? Where's all this, you know, all the crap that I was craving and depriving myself of in the months leading up to the show? I would go and binge eat on it after the contest was over. And then months to lose it, only a few weeks of binge eating to gain it all back. And then I'd be back to square one, fatter than ever. And I mean, that's the reality behind, you know, most fitness and fat loss transformations. Like people show you their before and after, but they don't show you the after, right? What happens 6 months or a year after the after picture? Like a lot of times people are back to square one and probably even heavier than ever. You know, it's the whole yo-yo diet. Like they'll see them, they're at their top, very heaviest weight, and then they'll diet down and they'll take that before and after picture, but then they don't show the after, right? When they've rebounded and gained the weight all back again. And they're like, oh, fuck. Like that's the reality of it. So you need to have a system in place where it's sustainable. It's not this extreme all or nothing approach. It has to be good enough, but good enough consistently. One of my coaches, he has a good phrase. It's like, we want to be consistently good versus occasionally great. Like, just think of that. That's the way you want to approach your fitness and your life in general. Like, consistently good. Like, you don't have to be, you know, the elite level all the time, or, you know, performing at 100% or whatever, but you want to be consistently good instead of occasionally great, right? And that's the whole thing. Like the way I like to put it, you want to be good enough, but good enough consistently, right? That's it. And once you have that mindset in place, then it allows you to enjoy real world situations. Like prime example. Like I enjoyed the Christmas holidays. I mean, when I did so without blowing things out of proportion, like I enjoy it and then I can get back on track versus this all or nothing mentality, which comes about from the extreme approach. So that's what I really cover in that Ripped After 40 PDF download. So if any of you are looking for a sustainable, realistic approach to not only getting in shape, but staying in shape, and if you've ever gone through yo-yo dieting, you know what I'm talking about, right? You suffer it out, yeah, and you drop a bunch of weight, but then 6 months or a year later, you got it all gained back again. Like, what's the point of that? Like, that doesn't help anybody, right? If you're going to lose it, you want to be able to lose it and keep it off and enjoy the process. That's what this is all about, right? And if you can't enjoy the process and sustain it, then it's all for naught. So, again, this is for you, Don. Those are my tips, right? The big one is go download that Ripped After 40 PDF. And again, the link is in the description below this video. All right, moving on. Let's see. Lee's got a question for us. He says, I finally got the go-ahead for TRT treatment. Will this help with niggling small injuries? Despite going to physio and a chiropractor, they're taking so long to heal. It may, but it's not guaranteed. And it really depends on the type of injuries and everything else. But with that being said, if you have low testosterone, which I'm assuming you do, if you're qualified and you're for TRT replacement, then obviously your hormone levels are less than optimal. And if they're less than optimal, your recovery is less than optimal. So you're always like operating in a deficit. You're not fully recovered. You're not fully maximizing your potential. So by getting your hormones in check, that should help to speed up the recovery process. And it should help with some of those injuries as well. Again, it depends on the type of injuries, but generally speaking, it should help, right? Now, with that being said, it depends on what type of injuries you have. The biggest thing when it comes to recovering from an injury is to avoid aggravating it and making it worse. Like, you have to find ways to work around it so that you can still stay active without causing further damage. And this can be very frustrating and very challenging at times, depending on what type of injuries they are. I mean, I'll give you some examples. Like in my case, I've had a few bad injuries over the years. My first muscle tear was actually a tear in the muscle tie-ins right in my right armpit. It's like in the lat tricep tie-in area, those muscles that connect the lats and the triceps, right going through the armpit. That was the first major muscle tear I had. That set me back over a year. I was over a year recovering from that. And even now, it's not 100%. Like that, I did that back in 2008. That injury still haunts me today. Like, I can't lift the same weights that I did prior to that injury. Like, I can't do heavy deadlifts anymore, or heavy pull-ups and things like that. Like before that, I used to do heavy deadlifts, 500 plus pounds for reps. I used to do weighted pull-ups where I'd strap a 45-pound plate to my waist and do pull-ups. I can't do those type of exercises anymore because if I put too much strain on those previously torn, all of that area, it's just going to re-injure it again. So I have to be very conservative about that. Another one, I tore my left bicep. Actually, I tore both biceps, but the right one was just some muscle fiber tears, and that healed up fine. The left one, there's actually some partial tendon tear in there. And the left bicep is not as strong as the right one, and it never will be. So I have to be careful with that. And then these are injuries that just doesn't take like a couple weeks or something to heal up. Like these are injuries that take a year or more to heal up. So in that process, I'm working around it the best I can. So I'm still trying to keep myself active and then work around that without causing further damage. And even now, like over a decade later, I still have to be selective over my workouts when working around these injuries. And that's why I'm such a huge advocate of injury prevention, because there's nothing that can slow your progress down more than an injury. I mean, I've said this multiple times, and I know if you're regulars, you've probably heard it, but if you're not, it's worth listening to or worth re-listening to. Like, if you skip a workout, big deal, because you can always go and work out the next day. If you go to the gym and you do an easy workout, you don't train to failure, you leave reps in the tank and you go in there, you just go through the motions, do a half-ass workout. Big deal. You can always go back and train harder the next day. if you blow your diet, you go out and you pig out and you eat and you cheat on your diet and just totally go off the rails. Big deal, because you can always clean it up the next day, right? Like, all these are little short-term things, but you can always fix it right away. Like, you can instantly get back to the gym. You can instantly train harder. You can instantly clean up your diet. You are in total control over those situations. If you go in there and you push too hard and you get injured and you tear something or injure something, you're not bouncing back the next day. Like, an injury just doesn't, you can't fix it right away. It could take weeks, it could take months, it could take years, and sometimes you may never fully recover from it. So that's why injury prevention is the most important thing. And again, depending on what type of injuries you have, they may take a long time to heal. But getting back to your question, I think the hormone replacement therapy will help with that process for sure. All right, moving on. Who else we got there? Jose is joining in. Says Happy New Year, and Happy New Year to you as well. Says, I caught listening to all the live chats after the World Cup. Anyway, what do you think about cryotherapy for hypertrophy? I've never done it before, and honestly, I don't know if it's going to have any impact on muscle building, for that matter. I don't have any personal experience with it, so I mean, I really not even going to waste time flapping my gab about it, because anything I say is just, my opinions based on no experience. So I really can't offer any feedback or suggestions on that. I've never done it before, and I will say this: it's not required for hypertrophy, because people have made muscle gains and gotten great physiques without doing cryotherapy. So I don't have any personal experience to share on that. But Happy New Year to you. Steven say, thanks, you're awesome, much appreciated, and glad to help. And Don saying, thanks, I'll be checking out the book. The video you recommend is actually what introduced me to your work. Great video. Awesome. All right, good stuff. So glad you found that video helpful. And what else we got there? I think, if I'm not mistaken, that was all the questions and comments that came through there on my end. I believe it is. And if that's the case, that's fine by me, because I'm going to get ready to include this video chat up, because I want to spend some time with my family now. So hopefully, guys, you got some value from this. I always enjoy doing these video chats and sharing a few tips and insights and just shooting the breeze and having a chat with you. So I will get this clued up. And again, this is our final video chat now of 2022. And the new year is coming around, so we'll be picking things up now again in the new year, next Friday, usually around 5. I usually say 5 p.m. Eastern time is when I usually do these video chats, but sometimes it's a little earlier, sometimes it's later, depending on my schedule. Today was a little bit later. I was actually out visiting my mother. We had dinner at my mother's house today, and trying to explain to my mother that, hey, I got to get home to do a video chat. And she's, no, you don't. Come have a cup of tea, right? Sit back and relax, right? And I said, no, Mom, I got a video chat to do. And she said, you can do that later. So trying to escape mother during the holidays is not the easiest thing to do, but I managed to do it. So we're a little later than normal today, but got it done nonetheless. And I still had dinner and a cup of tea with Mom. So win-win all around. But again, guys, hopefully you have yourself a good new year. And the video chat replay will be posted up afterwards, and I'll get the timestamps and everything uploaded. And if you want to go back and check out any of our past replays, they're posted up on the Total Fitness Bodybuilding YouTube channel. In the top menu bar of the page there's a tab that there's called Live. You click on that, and it's replays of all of our past live video chats. And if you open them up, like in the first comment of each one of those, there's timestamps for all the different questions we covered. So if there's specific topics that you're looking for, you can look through them instead of watching the full video chat. I mean, if you want to watch the full video chat, you're more than welcome to. But if there's specific questions that you're looking for, you can scroll through them and pick out the questions that interest you in the timestamps. So just wanted to make you aware of that if you aren't already. So you can go back and check out some of the past ones. And I will be back again next Friday with another one. So in the meantime, have yourself a great one. Have yourself a great New Year's. And I will talk to you next year. Take care. Over and out. End the broadcast.